A Christian Testimony. From Hollywood Actor to Preacher, the Dino Andreadis Story. Part 1 of 2. Pursuing his dream of becoming a Hollywood actor, Dino Andreadis faces the harsh realities of the entertainment industry, encounters deceit and temptation, and even contemplates marrying to make his dream come true. An audio testimony presented by https://thebiblerevival.com and https://breadsite.org. A solitary figure stood on a dark, deserted hilltop, high above the city of angels. Overhead, a myriad of stars twinkled in the beautiful night sky as the blazing neon lights below beckoned intensely. I was the lone figure on the Los Angeles hilltop. It was 1978. I was 19 and at last I stood on the threshold of my dream becoming a reality. The dream had gripped me since boyhood, that of becoming a Hollywood actor. Grasping for the slightest chance to make a connection in the movie industry, I visited the posh Woodland Hills mansion of movie actor Telly Savalas, known especially for his TV series, Kojak. Being a Greek like myself, I was certain Telly would be my link with Tinseltown's big league. Every nerve ending in my body was tensed with a strange mixture of energetic excitement and fear as I knocked on the massive door of the Savalas' home. In a few moments the door to fame and fortune would be opened wide. The door swept open with expensive ease. "Good evening. My name is Dino Andreadis. Is Mr. Savalas in?" In spite of my jolting nerves, I managed to sound cool and collected. "This is it," I told myself, "my ticket to the stars." The stranger standing in the brightly lit doorway stared at me for several seconds, then he laughed. As the ornate door was slammed in my face a few moments later, all I could hear was the stranger's laugh as he looked at my shocked face and told me that Telly hadn't lived there for at least 10 years. My fascination with showbiz went back to my childhood when, at the age of 4, I was already a fan of the fabulous Chubby Checker. Once, during a trip on a cruise ship with my parents, I heard the dinner orchestra strike up a familiar Checker tune. Before my parents knew what had happened, I bolted onto the dance floor to a round of applause. That night I stole the show. In my teens I lived for the dynamic night life of Montreal. Entertainment paid good money. I was earning about $400 a week, and that was quite a bit of cash for a 17-year-old back in 1976. One day my vice principal told me I should consider going to Hollywood. The idea caught hold of me with a passion. With high hopes and nearly empty pockets, I arrived in Hollywood in 1978. In a morass of 8 million people, I began to pound the pavement earnestly along with thousands of other hopefuls in search of stardom. Each night I returned home to my tiny, humble apartment with tired swollen feet and not a break in sight. Every night as I went to sleep, I looked up at the ceiling crying out to an unknown God, "If you're up there someplace, please help me." As long as I can remember, I always had a longing for truth. I didn't go to church, and I didn't know God, but as I cried out night after night to the lonely ceiling in my LA apartment, I was crying out for help, for truth, for reality. There was something missing in my life. Perhaps stardom was the key that would fill the void. Several long months passed. Still no hope of a breakthrough. I decided to sneak promotion photos under the doors of casting directors at the major film studios. Out of the blue, my telephone rang. My heart pounded with inexpressible excitement. It was the casting director of a major studio. He wanted to see me. At last. We met for a 45-minute interview, which is a long interview in Hollywood. The man wanted to meet me again later that evening. I could hardly contain the thrill inside of me at this dynamic turn of events. At precisely 8 p.m. a white Mercedes sports coupe arrived to pick me up. The casting director took me out to a popular night spot. After 15 minutes with him, I began to feel uneasy. I couldn't explain it. But I was not totally naive about the lifestyles of people in the entertainment world. Bluntly, I asked the man what he wanted from me. With sickening horror, I realized I was face to face with the Hollywood casting couch. The casting director said that he would give me part in his next film if I paid the price, sexual compromise. Much later, I discovered just how many are willing to pay that price of the chance at stardom. I asked the casting director to take me home immediately. What he was asking me was out of the question. Then an acting tryout came through from NBC Studios. A script arrived by messenger. What a sensational feeling. A chance to do Harvey Korman's lines on the Carol Burnett show. Arriving at the studio, I saw Tom Snyder finishing a show on my left. Further on, I saw Bob Hope finishing a Christmas special. I couldn't believe it. Suddenly my knees began to shake. I stood in front of a monstrosity of a camera and heard the director say, "Action." I froze. Not a line of my memory work came to mind. I ran out of the studio, terrified and embarrassed, a scared 20-year-old kid. Yet a windfall of calls began pouring in after that. My dream was unfolding further than I could keep up with. Experienced actors were utterly amazed when I told them about the calls I was getting. Finally, a major breakthrough. An offer came in from the casting director at 20th Century Fox for a part in a series. There was one slight hitch. The director said he wanted to hire me, but he couldn't. What? Why not? I exclaimed. Because you are Canadian, he said. Canadian? What do you mean, I'm Canadian? So is William Shatner. What does it matter if I am Canadian? The problem was simple. I was an illegal alien. I couldn't be hired for a legal job in the US without a green card or working permit. How do I get a green card? I practically shouted. I'll get one. I'll do anything. This has to be it. I cried out to the ceiling and to my unknown God that night. How many hundreds of nights had I cried out like this? Not for a minute did I realize that in all of those heartrending cries, I was searching not for my dream of stardom, I was searching for God. The next day I handed over $96 for a 5-minute appointment to a lawyer who presented me with two options for getting a green card. I could invest $65,000 in a business in the US, or I could marry an American girl. What could I do? I didn't have a quarter to buy a bag of candy. How could I invest in a business? There was only one option. I began to search for an American wife. The very next day, amazing as it seemed, I met a man who introduced me to a lady who would marry me to get me my green card. The fee was $500. I paid a deposit on the 502 days later. I called to check the progress of the arrangements and I discovered that I had been had. The woman and her business manager had disappeared. Frantic to get my green card, I began combing the LA nightclubs in search of a woman who would marry me. A few days later, I met a beautiful young woman who told me that she had fallen instantly in love with me. When she heard about my dilemma, she said she was willing to marry me. In reality, I later realized that since she knew I was to be an actor, she just wanted to marry me to get a cut of the pie. Elated, I headed my way home and began making plans. Things were falling into place. A wife. A green card. An acting career. Then as I waited for the bus, a young man slipped a piece of paper into my hand. Perplexed, I looked at the paper and saw words stare right up at me. Jesus Christ is coming soon. Are you ready? The message pierced through my cluttered thoughts like a lightning bolt. I had heard about Jesus Christ. I had gone to church only when I had to, sometimes at Christmas or Easter when my mother pulled me by the ears to go. But something told me, this is the truth. Believe this. Suddenly I felt confused. In my desperation to get home and put my thoughts in order, I jumped off at the wrong bus stop. Standing there was the same young man who had given me the tract. He mentioned he, too, had somehow landed at the wrong stop. Coincidence? Unannounced to me, it was Providence. Discussing the coincidence, we began walking together for a short distance. The young man's name was David. I decided to invite him into my apartment for a cup of coffee. I had some questions about the tract to ask him. David began sharing the message of the Bible with me. He told me about God's love for me, and that God has a special plan for each person's life. Suddenly, I wanted David to get out of my apartment. I didn't want to hear any more. "What's the matter?" David asked. "You wanted me to tell you these things." "Yes, David, I did. I know I can't live the way I would have to live if I gave my life to Jesus Christ as you're encouraging me to do. I know if I did that, I'd have to give it all to Him. There's too much at stake in my life right now. I can't do it. Get out. Get out." David left. The next morning at 10, I had an appointment with my bride-to-be. I pushed thoughts of David and his message about Jesus Christ out of my mind. It was 9 o'clock and there was a knock at the door. I thought my bride-to-be was early. A kindly, tall, black lady stood at the door. She introduced herself as David's pastor, and said that he told her about him. "When he told me about you, I felt compelled to pray for you throughout the night. Dino, do not do whatever you are about to do," she said, and with that she turned and left. I was flabbergasted, and for the first time a real holy fear came over me. Somehow, I felt a warning in my heart to do as she said. I did not realize it at the time, but God had led this woman to my place at the right time. If she had not come, I would have married this woman I hardly knew, and God's plan for my life would have been shattered. When my bride-to-be arrived an hour later, I told her I couldn't go through with our plans. Deep inside, I had always wanted to marry and build a life with a special person. This is the end of part 1 of 2. Thank you for listening to this testimony. We hope it has been helpful. Now, let's briefly introduce a new book, The Surface Theory by R.G. Gibson, that presents 2 new innovative creation theories. Born from personal revelation and years of research, these 2 theories emerged from previously overlooked key words, offering profound new insights into Genesis. This book also unveils new scientific discoveries related to this topic. Prepare for a paradigm shift that makes Genesis logical, dissolving the previous barriers between faith and science. Find the key to these mysteries and many more within the pages of The Surface Theory by R.G. Gibson, available on Amazon. Please like, share, or subscribe to our channel. Thank you, and may God bless you.